All right, guys, we're back for the third round of listed teams. Welcome back to NRL Fantasy Analysis. Here we are, Fort Dragons and Sharks on the Thursday night. It's going to be a pretty nice battle, this one. Two teams that have really improved over the off season and have started really good. Dragons definitely had every chance to win that game if they didn't have a couple of sin bins, for example. So very, very interested in this one. I think it's going to be a tight tussle and just hopefully plenty of good footy. So Tyrell Sloan obviously had a bit of a tough one last week. Did score his try, but he's someone that I'd probably be looking to move on. I just don't see the upside in his general play in terms of his meters, his busts, that kind of thing. He's someone that's got a fair bit of talent, and his defense is not up to it yet. So he's going to miss a few tackles for sure as well. And I just think he's a little bit too expensive. We obviously spoke about him at the start of the season as being someone that we wouldn't have started with. But if you have and you're thinking about moving him on, I say it's probably a good idea. Guys like Sully and Lomax are definite holds. I'm on there. You could decide either way with him. If you will need to use his money to get someone you've missed out on, whether it's Tungo or if you need if you just need his money to go somewhere else, then that is fine also. Ben Hunt's obviously a great option, but I wouldn't expect 85 every week. We saw the 30 odd and then the 85, so can be anywhere in between, that's for sure. Jackie Bird, I'm still seeing a bunch of people looking to move him on. His 247s have not been really great games for him, and you see a lot of his games around that 50 mark in the second row, for example. If you look at his stats from last year, then that's where he's at. So for me, with him, you just got to hold on tight to him. He's a keeper in the centres. Their bench doesn't really change. Their whole side doesn't really change at all. And you look to the Sharks side, we see Teague Wilton, unfortunately, is out for the week. He took the early guilty plea, so we see Talakai move into that space. Just be aware with him that he will probably score well this week, but there's also a good chance that following this that he won't, as he moves back to the bench. Yes, he scored fairly well last week, but unfortunately, he's not going to get a long-term spot in this team with how good Teague's playing, for example. So that's that there. And then we get another chance to see McInnes on the bench. This could obviously change heading into the actual match, but with McInnes there, hopefully maybe a 30 to 40 minute effort this time, so we can see another price drop for him would be ideal. Nakora, if you're looking at him, I'm probably a little bit worried about his ability to lift his game, lift his scoring. He's always been a mid-40s average for me, and I don't think he's a keeper. So anyone who you think that isn't going to be a keeper, they've scored pretty poorly and don't have a chance to make any cash over this first few weeks, then I think they're a sell coming into this week. So Nakora, if you need to use his money elsewhere, then do that. The issue with Finucane, if you're looking at him as an option this week, he's had 2 awesome weeks, and if you actually have a look at his stats, when he played with Storm in a bigger minute role, you see that his points aren't actually as good as you may have thought. So let's look to some games here. We got 55 minutes for a 38, for example, 68 minutes for a 39, a 39 in 66 minutes. You've got 40 and 53. He's come out and had 2 awesome starts, a 45 and a 43 tackle game. And this is something that I don't think is completely sustainable. He hasn't really done that ever. He's got a 41 game back in 2020 and a bunch of mid-30s. There's really no games at all. Literally, his 2 games here. The only time he's hit 46 was 2019 around 22. So I don't think it's sustainable going forward, and the minutes are going to probably drop a tad as well. I'd say somewhere in the 50s for him. So if you're thinking a 10 minute drop and also a 5 to 10 tackle drop, with he's basically had he's had a -2 and a negative in both games, so a penalty and also a missed tackle. So I can see him coming down to about a 40 average. So I think he's a little bit of a trap for Dale. Yes, his break even's fairly low, and he's at a solid price, but he's priced in the low 40s, for example. I just think that you can do better than Finucane, because he's not going to be a keeper in the long term. You definitely have to move him on, sometime in the season. So that's that with him. We've got Fafita on the bench, still going to eke out a few 20s for you. I don't think Trindle becomes an issue. He's coming onto the bench. He'll play that cover for multiple positions. He might have to come on for Brayley. Who knows with that? But if a few people have asked me, are we worried about him coming into the 6 role and annoying Hines? I think Moylan's played good enough to keep that spot. So that's all I'd say on that one. All right, move to the Tigers and the Warriors. This will be a fairly interesting game as well. I expect the Warriors to probably get away and win this one. Reece Walsh was really, really interesting, really, really good last week. So he comes into a lot of people's thoughts, but he's pretty expensive. So that's that on the fullback side. Jesse Arthur's had a nice start. he's someone that you could have some interest in. If you think Vaalea is going to come back, and yeah, he will definitely take his spot, or he'll end up on the wing for Pompey. But yeah, Arthur's did really pretty well. He's got the dual position too, but he's someone that is just over that 300k mark, which becomes a little bit of an issue. If we had him in the 250, then I'd say he's probably a much better option. Cody Nikorima comes back in the 7 jersey for Ash Taylor, unfortunately for him. And in our forwards, we see Lodge, hopefully, for him, for his sake, getting a few extra minutes. Fanua Blake is going to be solid again. Aitken, is probably expecting a better score than the 40, somewhere between the 40 and 56 if there's no attacking stats. Katoa, you can keep him in your side for now, but again, just be wary that he's going to eventually stop making money and be a trade out in your squad. Joshy Curran is a gun, and anyone who has that cash to bring in, I would be suggesting to bring him in, but don't trade out a keeper. That has this role hasn't changed. It just hasn't started as well as Joshy out because of to get him in, for example. On the Tigers side, we see again not too many changes. We have Hastings going to the judiciary. We probably see Jock Madden come in if he's out, but it looks like it'd be a 1-game suspension if it is. Little comes back in. So we lose Simpkin to the bench. So if you picked him up, unfortunately, you only got a couple of weeks out of Jakey, which is what we thought. It was only going to be a 4-week injury, and he got injured 2 weeks before the start of the season. Stefano's the big one. We'll talk about him a little bit further and go through some of the stats in another video. But Stefano, I think, is give or take for now. He's someone who's probably not going to make you money anytime soon, right? And is he going to be a keeper? We're not exactly sure. So that when someone's in that position, they become a very easy trade out target. If you've got someone who's clear standout, whether you need to go down to a cash cow that you missed out, or whether you can somehow go up to a gun, I think that's the idea. I wouldn't be trying to trade sideways for Stefano at this stage. So just be aware of that. Tuolangi is out this week. So yeah, all just based on the head knock, guys, if you're asking me. He's out for the 1 week based on that. And Luke Garner comes into that starting side, which is a little bit interesting because, what does that mean for Tui if Garner comes in and plays well and the Tigers win, for example? Do they change that? Does Tui come onto the bench? There's a few things to think about with that one. Simpkin probably drops off, for example, and because Peachy could play some 9. But yeah, very interesting with Tui. I'd probably be holding him at this stage, but definitely something to keep in mind. All right, we move to the Bunnies and the Roosters. And on the Bunny side, Ilias, are we going to give him another crack? I think, at 296k, whatever he is, you probably can. But if you want to get rid of him, you can too. He's not going to, I don't doubt he's going to be a keeper, and he's coming up against a few tough sides. So, yeah, he's not doing you much harm if you're not playing him, if he's in your emergencies. But if you need to trade him out, that would be fine as well. Damien Cook, I've had a few people saying, do I go Cook to Grant? I think that's a silly option. Cook's average, 50, he's got 53 and a 54 the first 2 games or whatever it is. So, he's fine. He'll improve from there. Same with Reid Marnie, which we'll talk about in a second. But both guys that you should be holding because they could both bust out 100 for sure. Jairo, an average game for him in 45, which again still beats his break even and what he was priced at for last year. So hold on to him. Probably not a screaming buy, but definitely a hold. Cam Murray is closer to a buy than a hold for sure. He had an amazing game, and he's going to be completely dominant for this side and have his hands on the ball in incredible amount. So I'd imagine it's just going to continue in a game like this where he's up against a tougher side. Other than that, not too much to talk about. Davi Moale ends up on the reserve. So if you had him, unfortunately, you shouldn't be able to use him unless there's a late out for them. Okay, Roosters, we see Billy Smith on the wing this time. Momorowski in the centres, which I think we saw a move mid-game last week, which was interesting. Sammy Walker, you can probably hold again, but if you wanted to move him on, I'm also okay with that. Again, didn't want you to start with him in the first place. Well, it wasn't one of my picks. Was okay with you starting, but wasn't one of my big picks. Connor Watson looks like he is most likely going to be okay to start, and if he isn't, then it'll just be a 1 week injury. So I'd be holding him if you own him, and obviously an early game in the week, so we can decide what to do with him. Nat Butcher comes in the starting side for Crichton. It's a very interesting one, and that's a big issue if you own Crichton. I think there's about 9-10% that own him. What do you do? Does it mean he plays through the middle? They have Baker and Hargraves to play that. Does Nat Butcher play big minutes? Does he play like a 50 and Crichton plays 30 on the edge and 30 in the middle or 25 in the middle? I think he'll score really well through the middle, but you want him playing 80 minutes, don't you? He's someone that you could score a try at any point. So that becomes very interesting and a very much a wait and see as to if you're looking to trade him out. You can definitely give him another week or two if he stays on the bench, doesn't score too well, then that's an issue for sure. If you bit the bullet and traded him this week because he's already lost a bit of money and whatever else, then yeah, I'm not going to like crucify you for it, but that's completely up to you on that one. Let's move along. Panthers and the Knights. So fourth game of the round, we have a very similar side for the Panthers. Obviously, with Brian To'o out, we see Taylor May move into that wing spot. So we see Rob Jennings come into 20 on the reserve. So we also see Nathan Cleary in 24. So he's getting close, guys. Most likely won't pop in this round. I feel like you don't need to rush him back. So he's just there available, and if he's completely fine, then we can pop him into. You can try to pop him in your sides, but I'd definitely wait a week. Coming up against the Knights, who are going to be a decent side as well. But Tungo, you definitely I feel like is a must-have going forward. He's getting up in in the prices now for sure. Him and Crichton are doing really well. Taylor May, I could probably have him as a wait and see. I'd have. But because he is over that 300k mark. But if you wanted to straight swap him, he should have that spot locked up. Him and Tungo played a lot of footy together, so he should do pretty well. But be aware that he's a winger. He could have 20. He could get a 50. Even with the talent. That's how it works for wingers for sure. So just be aware of that if you're picking him up over 300k. Eisenhuth is there. He'll do well again. Fish Harris has been named, so that's good news for him, his owners, and everything around that, which is good. Yeah, there's some worries about him not getting his spot with the shoulder injury and Spencer Lanu getting that starting spot. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. Expect Spencer to get around that 30 minutes again. Liam Martin is definitely a hold. Kikau is not a buy, guys. I knew I'd get a few people asking about Viliame, sorry. But he's either going to get 30 odd or he's going to get a 70 odd with a couple of tries, which is interesting. But Isaiah Yeo, a great option as always. That's that there. All right, on the Knights side, Clifford's been great. Ponga's back, which is cool. Gagai, a few people asked about him. He's had 2 amazing games. He does play really well for the Knights, but just be aware that he won't be getting 70s regularly. He'll probably average out between the 45 to 50 mark, but he is priced pretty high as well. So be aware of that with Gags. Randall, keep playing him in your side. He's going to be good. Barnett gets that 12 jersey with Fitzgibbon out with his MCL, so he'll be out for a little bit, which is not too bad. Curdy Mann, keep playing him. He'll be fine. I'm not worried about him personally, but a few people might look to move him on or something. The interchange stays the same, so we see another opportunity for Leo Thompson. A few people asked me about Matt Croker. He's come in, he didn't play round 1, so there's that, right? He comes in and does really well off the interchange. So did Thompson. They both won't do that well. Their PPMs won't be that high on a week-to-week basis, and they're coming up against a really good pack in the Panthers, so they'll have to really step up. And will they be able to do that against a much harder side? I'd say their PPMs will be a lot lower. Croker is, I think, personally, less chance of making this squad when they get Daniel Saifidi and these guys back, which they aren't on the reserves this week, which is good for their prospects this week, especially if you have Leo. But going forward, I wouldn't be touching Matty Croker unless there was a heap of injuries and he happens to start or something. But again, not happening at the moment. Stormers, we see Paps with a couple of lower scores, but he should be sweet. This will be a fun game. The Storm and the Eels. It'll be interesting to see what Munster and Hughes do. And Harry Grant, there's some rumour around Harry Grant potentially having COVID. I haven't heard anything about it. Wait until something concrete comes out before rubbing him out or not picking him up, whatever you want to do there. Xavier Coates, again, someone who's going to do okay. I expect not a massive game against the Eels. He's every chance of getting 15 in this one against a tougher side. But he's also every chance of scoring a try or two. But that's that. So Harry Grant's obviously a buy if there's no COVID, and that's all bullshit. Joshy King. So the thing with Joshy is we see Brandon Smith in 23. So even if he's not playing this week, that means he'll be back next week, which means he'll go to 13. King will go to the bench, right? And that means his minutes are going to be a lot lower. So his prospects have gone down a fair bit. But I will dive into a video with him in there and talk about that a little bit further. But just be aware of that Brandon Smith's on the bench and could take a bunch of his minutes. Alec McDonald was solid on the weekend, but not really a cash cow at this point. Not going to get the minutes, especially with Smithy coming back. Wishart was a trap and continues to be. So just leave him on your emergencies. On the Eels side of things, Penasini's definitely a hold. Brown and Moses both went well last week. Reed, I think, is definitely... I think he's a hold, guys. I don't see the point in moving him to Grant. Like in this game, Grant could get a 45 and Reed could get an 80. It could go the other way around, but I feel like it's a wasted trade. Get Grant in another way. If you want both of them, for example, I think you can manage to do that somehow. Whether you've got an injury into a mid guy or a higher tier guy, then that could be the way to go. Papali'i is doing well. Hold him. A few people said they want to get rid of him. Silly. Nathan Brown's back in the 13 role, which is cool. And yeah, Kafusi's on the 17 role. So yeah, it's good to see Nathan Brown back properly. But other than that, not too much to talk about on their interchange. No one to steal Reed's minutes either. So you got an 80-minute hooker, use him. Raiders and Titans, and this is the interesting one. CNK, Nickel Klukstar. So with him, my issue is that mid-range guy that has now had a low score, and he's not going to have much chance of making money. So I don't think he's a keeper either. In this scenario, if you want to trade straight swap into someone you think is going to make some money, or you can get to a gun or something like that, then I'd happily let you trade him out. I think that's fine. Snyder's back. Get him in your side. He should score fairly well against the Titans, whether it's tackles or a little bit of everything. He'll be good. Like that first round, amazing start for him. Tapane, I think you can give him an extra crack for sure. Papali'i has had an average start fantasy-wise. Tom Starling, the big one here is Hodgson's now out for the year. It's Starling's team in terms of him playing the 9 jersey. We see Trevelyan move down into the 20 jersey, and Frawley gets the position on the interchange. I just think Frawley's going to be able to cover a few more positions for you. If there happens to be an issue, he can play a little bit through the middle, but he can also play in the halves, which will be really cool. So I see him as more of an important interchange than what Trevelyan is, especially with Starling being able to play big minutes. He has done in the past. So I feel Starling becomes a really good option with Trevelyan on the reserve. So we'll talk about him again in a deeper dive video where we talk about some must-haves, some holds, and some avoids. But yeah, he becomes a good one to think about, and I'll talk about him a little bit later. Hudson Young is still there, which is good. The bench, nothing changes apart from that Frawley one. Savage is in the 18 jersey, but he's been there for the majority of the time. Sebastian Chris on the reserve, so Rapana comes back as well. We lose Schiller. And Kotrick's back. Sorry, there's a few on this team. So Schiller, just hold him. He's too cheap to try and trade, to be honest. Titans, in terms of them, Toby Sexton is a great option if you need someone at that 600k or just above price point. He's solid. There's a few guys around there, the Moses, the Browns, that kind of thing. All pretty solid there. He'll be good. For Feeder, what do we do with him? I think you hold, definitely. He hasn't done anything at all, and he's scored, he's averaging about that 47 mark, so he's fine. Don't worry about him. Bowie Fermor had a really, really nice start. We'll go into him a little bit deeper in another video, but the 33 involved 40 meters run, and his 70 obviously a nice lucky try for him, just being there on the inside of Brimson. But yeah, some much better stats, base stats, and the 80 minutes was there for him. So he's going to be a great option, I think, at that cheaper price if you need to pick up a few of those type of guys. So that's that there. Will Smith on the interchange, you can just keep holding, but I wouldn't be bringing him in. All right, let's move to the last couple of games there. We've got the Broncos and the Cowboys, and this might be a fun one as well. Obviously, the Broncos Dogs was pretty good. Cowboys were decent last week, so have some opportunity to show what they did last week and continue that, especially after a bit of a tough one against the Dogs in the first round. But we see Tony Staggs is having a bit of a tough start, so he's going to start becoming fairly cheap, and I'd be holding off on him. If you own him, I think he's okay to hold against the Cowboys side. It should be, surely he gets a better opportunity playing next to Reynolds than he did last week. I just don't think enough went his way. We still see Billy Walters in the 17, which is fine. Kobe Hetherington on the bench. They haven't really changed their side at all. Expect 35 to 40 minutes for him again. Haas, captaincy option always. And on the Cowboys side, Hammer, again, keep holding him. He has some opportunity to really take his game to the next level. And if the Cowboys are actually good, or decent, he's going to get more opportunities as well. So keep looking out for him and hold on to him. Dearden was solid. Guys like Tom Gilbert and Nanae are all guys that you should hold, but just be aware that, maybe if you have an opportunity to loop one of those guys, and that could be ideal. They do play later in the week, which can be an issue as well. But yeah, two guys to have a look at. Lolo as well. He hasn't scored incredibly, but surely has an opportunity to improve. And the other thing is Ruben Cotter in the 16 jersey. So he takes, whose position did he take? Out. Dunn. So Dunn being out means Cotter comes back in. We do see Tanua Brown, who is in the 23 jersey as well. So he has an opportunity to come back as well this week, and he'd probably go for Griffin on that interchange, for example. So that's that with those guys. I wouldn't be running to pick up Nene or Gilbert, for example. So yeah, that's that for that game. And last one, we got the Eagles and the Dogs. So this will be an interesting one. Surely the Eagles come on top of them and finally get a win on the board against a Dogs team that was decent, but a Manly team that's a lot better than what that's showing in their first 2 rounds. But in terms of Tommy, what are you doing with him? Do you hold? Do you cut your losses? You already lost a fair bit of money. Remember, you're locking that 120k loss in if you trade him out. And you're probably going to want him back at some point. So that's kind of the issue that you have on your hands with Tommy. But up to you. Whether I'm not going to push it either way because he can come out against 100 against the Dogs, for example, and you'll hate me if I told you to get rid of him. Daly, he's been great. 60s, he's always a good option. Bully Moore gets his spot in the forward rotation again. We see Davey and we see Lawton on the interchange bench. So you'd imagine out of the 2 back rowers, the Bully's the one that loses. It probably means he gets 45 to 50 minutes. Can you play him? I think you can try and loop him. I'd probably look to, if you can, leave him on the emergencies this week, just for that fact. But yeah, at that price point, if he's looking to get lower minutes, then you could almost look to trade him out. If you had someone that was if you missed out on like a Tungo, then you could straight swap them. I would be okay with, but there's a lot of guys I wouldn't trade him for, if that makes sense. So we'll probably do a little bit of a Q&A later and be able to answer a bunch of those questions that you have around ETH in that one. What else we got on that side? Yeah, I suppose not too much else there. We don't see a Schuster or anything yet. And on the Dogs side, we see Dufty, who played solidly. Burton becomes a great option. We saw his base stats in the 39, and then we get a few more stats across the board in that second round against the Broncos. So he did really well, and he becomes a great option. And then moving to the forwards, Tavita Pangai, he's obviously playing a little bit on an edge, a little bit through the middle. There's a lot going on for him. But a few people asking around the offloads, and yes, he had 7 offloads, and that 28 points was in his score. So he got 56, 12 tackles only. So yeah, a lot of his points came from when he ran the pellet. So yeah, I suppose that's all to talk about on the forward side of the Dogs, except for Joshy Jackson, which a few people are worried about. His minutes were a little bit lower, but also his points production. So they do have a bunch of forwards to use, whereas last year he was kind of the main guy, playing big minutes, doing everything. So I'm slightly concerned. And if you are as well, then if you decide to move him on, I wouldn't push you away from that. He's obviously losing a fair bit of cash. And there's other guys that are doing really well that are in, so I suppose, better form is the way to think about it. But he will come good at some point in the season, and he's probably someone that we'll look to pick up a little bit later. On the interchange, Maxi King, we captain him, don't we? Like, that's the only option. I think we'd have finished at that. Maxi King, captain him, and you'll do fine. You'll do better than what Tommy's doing. We'll leave it on that, guys. Have a great day and subscribe. Appreciate it. See you later.